Okay, this is Necmettin Ozkan from Kuwait Participation Bank from Turkey. These are my lovely co-authors for this paper. So I will talk about Kanban Scrum and in terms of combining and comparing them. So we applied a systematic literature review. And as most of you knows from some kind of the reports about Agile, so Scrum and Kanban are very common in software industry. And as you guess, it is very important to design and decide the proper methods in the organization to get expected result from the projects. And both Scrum and Kanban naturally have their own strengths, weaknesses, limitations, relative advantages, and context limitations. And as many of the academic studies report, blending more than one method can yield better results than individual use because they can implement each other. However, none of the secondary studies so far provide extensive knowledge on the topic of comparing and or integrating Scrum and Kanban. Considering this gap, we applied a systematic literature review to investigate the characteristic of empirical studies only, which involves Scrum and Kanban by comparing and integrating them. So these are our research questions. The first one is about the contribution type and research method. The second one is about the advantage of each method over the another one. The third one is about the properties used from Kanban and Scrum in combining them. In particular, we investigated artifacts, roles, and events in this combining. And we aim to reveal some patterns in these combinations. Also, we also looked for some kind of transitions information, including the transition direction, and the transition years and transition reasons. And these are the results in terms of number. Returned our systematic literature review, which yields 38 academic papers by applying and after applying these inclusion and exclusion criteria. I want to underline some of them as one of it says we only focus on the empirical studies, and we also excluded the papers providing only use of Kanban or providing usage ratio of the methods or providing usage of Kanban, which is a specific method. And there's only one study we excluded in this regard. Also, we aim to exclude secondary studies, but as I mentioned, we have not witnessed or encountered any kind of systematic literature review or systematic mapping in this regard. So our results says that most of the studies are conference papers, and in terms of the Avenue International Conference on Agile Software Development, which is called XP, is at the top with 5 papers. And when it comes to the Journal of Software Evolution and Process is the top one. And more than 50% of the papers from academia, and almost 20% are from industry and academia collaboration. The United States is the top country in terms of producing the papers. And for the context of the academic papers we included, we see that most of the papers are from software development, software maintenance, and web-based content management systems. As you can see, there are increasing number of the papers which compare or integrate the both methods, and most of the papers provide case study, and most of them also provides only empirical evidence, not any new kind of method, model, technique, or whatsoever. By the way, 12 of the papers, of the remaining papers, provides model, and these are the results concerning the Kanban benefits against the Scrum. There are many, but I want to highlight some of the considerable ones. The first one says that Kanban is regarded more flexible and adaptive than Scrum, and easier for transition and use. And Kanban bears some kind of advantages in terms of quality, feasibility. And some people think that Kanban is better for development with no certain deadline and for small and not complex feature development. For the people side, for the people perspective, Kanban has some kind of advantages over Scrum in terms of collective understanding, respecting for people and their current titles, and producing less stress for the teams. As you see, from the same perspective, Scrum has lower, less than Kanban advantage, and some of the advantages of the Scrum over the Kanban say that Scrum has clear path clarity, a clear path through the well-defined processes, and it is better for the bigger teams and better for development with certain deadlines. And Scrum can empower the teams through better communication. Also, we have come up with some kind of elements using combining both methods. I want to highlight some of the elements from Scrum, including product owner, product backlog, user story, sizing. These are mostly these that I counted are mostly for the product backlog management of the software development. And also we have some kind of entities from Scrum, including um, sprint review, sprint retrospectives, and daily meetings. These are the meetings and events or rituals, what you called is. So these are the events from Scrum, mostly used in the combined version of the methods. So from Kanban, we see a considerable usage of Kanban boards, work in progress, pull system, and continuous flow. Also, there are some kind of customized entities from the hybrid models, including some kind of the elements like cylinder-based regular ceremonies, and some of the solutions provides work, experiments, hypothesize or release-based iteration rather than sprint-based iteration. And some of them try to move back and forwards in two ways instead of just one way in Kanban, just the forwards. Items can move only forward in Kanban flows, but some of the solutions provide the both directions. So, and the others says that product owner team and some kind of ceremonies scheduled on demand are beneficial for them. And also we see some sort of breaking the rules of the or default rules of the Scrum teams according to the needs of the organizations. And these are the results from the transition for the transition. So as you see, there's a dramatic increase in 2010. This is the years. This is the year which is Kanban is in which around which Kanban is popularized much. So as a transition direction, as you see, most of the transitions are to hybrids models, and most of them are from Scrum to another method. So on the right hand side, we can see transition reasons. Maybe we can call them as challenges for the particular method. Let's say for the Scrum, from the perspective of the process, there is problems about flexibility and predictability during the sprints for the frequent unexpected changes. So this makes Scrum unsuitable for maintenance teams in which the environment is so much changing with unexpected circumstances. And we see some kind of problems about quality decrease, especially when the teams are struggling to hit the target in the time, which is at the end of the sprint. Also, in the organizational level, on organizational perspective, we see some kind of issues about Scrum, including challenges in large-scale projects, fragmentation, and revolutionary change. Kanban has little, just few issues, but it has some kind of problems about lack of control and deadlines and not having a feel of progress. And as discussion, we can say that Scrums, there are some kind of issues about Scrum sprints and time boxes and team formation because they are almost static entities, which makes providing flexibility and agility challenging. And so it makes hard for the maintenance teams to have the high level of agility. And packaging work items also is an issue for Scrum, especially when we consider sprints focus on packaging work items with a development-oriented perspective. So we can say that sprint is a kind of fragmentation perspective from the window of the developers. And unsurprisingly and unlikely, sprints and Scrum includes deadlines like the other traditional methods. So to assign a static end creates a dangerous dichotomy between the nature of the work and these static ends, which leads to a dilemma for the teams. They can choose both way. I mean, they can choose to finish the work by the end of the sprint, or they can sacrifice some kind of the not concrete aspects like quality. And so we recommend to adapt business experiments, hypothesis-based iteration planning solutions rather than clock-based iteration planning. So in Scrum also we see some kind of push-based iterations by considering these aspects. For example, tasks can move to the next step as soon as they completed the previous step in Scrum sprints. Also, sprints can work for how much work to push into the sprint. And Scrum also pushes teams to produce shippable product at the end of the sprint. And these issues may lead to more stress and pressure on the teams and force them to compromise on quality. We recommend to use Kanban with limits as well as end-to-end pull system for more suitable and reliable flow management. And we look at inside the sprint. In Scrum, inside the sprint, the sprint is like a single iteration of which WIP limits is sprint base. So some kind of bottlenecks can occur inside the sprint. But on the other hand, in Kanban, each workstation is designed separately and traceability and visibility are provided, eliminating some kind of bottlenecks for the teams. Also, Scrum has some kind of scaling issues around isolated team members, especially when they are trying to be self-organized and cross-functional. And also in Scrum, there are some issues about holistic view and tracking the items of dependency, tracking of item dependencies. And sprints implies and provide a short-term approach. And actually, we recommend to aim to get team around the value streams for the customer and address the whole organization by adapting system thinking and fit for purpose principles. And we recommend to think and go beyond the sprint horizon because the sprint is so short for long-term thinking and long-term planning. And Scrum also provides a form with a rigid structure. In teams, they are trying to perform some kind of activities for just the sake of the framework, which can be called necessity for the framework, but it cannot be necessity for the nature of the work. And with the flexible structure in Kanban, on the other hand, allows teams to be more self-organizing. And on the other hand, for Kanban, it can be more challenging to take a shape. And in teams that do not have intrinsic motivation, applying Kanban can be challenging and can make the situations worse. And in Kanban also being in a homogeneous and flat flowing it cannot be supporting the feeling of the progress for the team's members. For the transition, we can say that Scrum is expensive, and Scrum steps for transitions are bulk, like in waterfall or traditional transition processes. In Kanban, on the other hand, there is an essential progress, and transition is easier, and there is no team's reorganization for transition. Also, Kanban recommends an iterative and incremental and shortly agile way of implementation and easy way for transition and use. And for the other topics, we can say that Scrum seems to be more advantageous than Kanban in complex projects. And Scrum is better at cycle time, while Kanban is better at lead time. And Scrum encourages more collaboration with the team, but inter-team collaboration seems problematic in Scrum. And some solutions break the Scrum's rigid team structure and redesign it according to needs. As you see, there are some kind of leaders and sub-teams or subgroups of specialism, and they can arrange the teams according to the needs of the organization rather than following the default formation of the Scrum teams. And Scrum's advantages in requirement management phases, while Scrum seems good at defining the projects, Kanban stands out in development part of it. In general, we can say that Kanban provides more advantage over Scrum, and there is one where the one method is weak, the other one can be strong, and integrating most advantage part of the methods and eliminating their disadvantages at the same time by integrating them can be helpful for organizations. So we recommend to use Scrum and Kanban with the and operator, not the or. Even though the creators of the Scrum and Kanban may not think like that. Kanban is methodology independent, so it can be applied to any kind of the methodology, and it can be used by any kind of the teams implementing Scrum, Extreme Programming, or Waterfall. And we recommend adapt methods in a way that will be beneficial to organizations rather than fully complying with that particular method. And we see in our results, most of the studies are focusing on process and people aspects of the transitions, but we need to see more study and more input for portfolio management, decision making, which can be called organization level perspective. And the subject of this study can be considered is being considered mainly by the practical led area, which means that it is driven by the sector. By the way, we need to more study, especially from the academia, that can provide more insight for the organization for such a kind of important subject. So this is the end of the presentation. Thank you for your listening. If you have a question, I can try to answer.
Thank you very much, and thank you for keeping the time. Could I just ask myself, you have obviously done this based on a systematic literature review. Have you thought about continuing on this and talking to companies about what they might do in this context, or do you have any plans to use it in a practical and constructive way?
Yeah, that's a good question, because our further study is about providing a kind of methods or approach to combine these methods in any way. I mean, we will produce a way of producing methods according to the needs of the organization, just not one method, but a way of combining them all together. So in this way, we will maybe guide the organizations to selecting any kind of the practice or entities or any kind of the artifacts from both methods, from Scrum and Kanban, and they can create their own method according to their context. This is our further study. We have already started this.
Excellent. So this was the preparation basically, and now you're going to continue it on. That's great.
That's right. That's right.
Very good. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.